Hello, gentlemen. I am so excited to have you here today. So today we are talking with Gavin Rummery, Richard Morton, and Jamie Morton about, I guess we're going to kind of go over a couple of Tomb Raiders, right? Like we'll start with kind of like your beginning at core design, go through Tomb Raider 2 and then into Tomb Raider 3 since we're in Tomb Raider 3 month. So thank you all so much for being here. This is so exciting. All right.
Very cool.
So I guess we'll just start with how each of you came to core design, right? So that just kind of set the foundation there. So let's start with Gavin and then we'll go to Richard and Jamie. So Gavin, do you want to kind of set the stage? How did you come to core design and what projects did you start with before Tomb Raider, if any?
Well, none. So I finished at university, so I actually stayed on at university, did a PhD, got to the end of that. By that point I decided, what did I like doing? Programming. Or did I like playing games? So I tried, sending off my CV to a game company. Core Design invited me to an interview and I got a job there, so that's how I started. And then I arrived on my first day. Mm-hmm. As I say, I was told, well, there's a couple of projects you could work on because Core was very informal. One of them was Tomb Raider, and go and chat to this guy Toby. So we sat on the stairs and he just sort of outlined this game. He kind of went, oh yeah, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like a movie, it's going to be, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my god, this sounds mad. I was sitting there like, oh, well, yeah, sort of, yeah, well, new boy here, yeah, great. Work on that, sounds exciting, but it's a bit like turning up at a car company and being told you're working on hopper cars or something. It's just so anyway, and then I was led into a room with about 3 people in it, just sat there, in the tiny old Core rooms that, I'm thinking, right, okay, we're going to build this epic game, are we? What's my job? You've just got to build the environments.
No big deal.
We don't know how to do that. Paul's doing the character thing, but you've got to do the environment. I think, haha, great. Anyway, it worked out in the end. So.
Yeah, that's a pretty big first industry gig. I love that. All right, how about for you, Richard? What were you up to at Core? When did you join Core, and what were you up to before you started working on Tomb Raider?
I think I joined Core, it must have been 1991, I think. Before that, I'd been in the industry a couple of years, joined the games industry before I left school. Luckily enough, I got to do like a work experience while I was at school at a tiny little games company called Wise Owl, near a place called Barnsley. They were supposed to be a software like educational company, but I walked through the doors and they were making video games for like the old Atari VCS and, ancient computers. Mm-hmm. So learned sort of basic sprites and mapping and game design there. Moved on to a place called High Tech in Sheffield, and we made budget games based around the Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera franchises. That was really fun. Spent a couple of years there. Made some really good workmates. The company went into trouble, and the boss of that company, a guy called Dave Palmer, he used to play golf with Jeremy Smith, who was the boss of Core Design. So he said, my company's going into a bit of trouble. Can you do anything for some of the guys? They're really good. And Jeremy was like, yeah, just send them down. We'll give them an interview. So that's what Jeremy's like, and he interviewed us and gave us jobs. So that's how I got to Core.
That's amazing. I mean, everybody always says that the industry is small now, but I suppose it was even smaller then. Just like connections make such a huge difference. So that's great to hear. How about for you, Jamie?
So I joined Core Design in '93, I think. So it's just a few days after my birthday in July. I was just straight out of school, basically. But before joining, for Chuck Rock 2 game, there was like a kind of a pre-release little competition in like a shopping mall in Sheffield. And so I went obviously with Richard, and obviously there was a bunch of the development people there. And so they had a competition just to like someone play a level of the game, a new who gets the highest score, basically. And you won a visit to the studio and some other prizes. I happened to got the highest score, but
it wasn't a fix either.
Unknown, and I just happened to go a different route, which other people didn't take, and I just collected lots of pickups and got a really high score. But I think just to, obviously, because I knew people at the studio, obviously my brother, so it's like not to have like this was a fix, and they let him win. So I didn't win. In the end, they gave it to the next person who came second place as such. But Jeremy announced on the stage that it's he'll be working for us later on anyway. So obviously I had no idea. I was like, oh my god, this is what? This is amazing. So yeah, I joined first in QA. When I first started, so yeah, I was just testing a bunch of games.
I love that. So you basically found out that you were going to have a future at Core on stage. I guess that's a fair trade. You didn't get first place, but you got a job in the industry.
I was still at school then as well, so it was my last 6 months maybe in school or something. So yeah, that was pretty crazy.
And what were you going to school for at the time?
Say again,
what were you going to school for at the time? So was this a career shift for you, or a shift in where you saw yourself?
I was just finishing high school, basically.
Oh, okay, high school. All right.
High school. So yeah, I joined core design when I was just 17.
That's amazing. That is, wow.
Sprightly and young chap at the time, yeah.
That is so cool. Okay, so what are each of your earliest memories of working on Tomb Raider then? So I feel like I remember from an interview with Toby Gard that he said development didn't really begin until 6 or 7 months before Tomb Raider's launch. So what was the focus till then? Were you guys just trying to figure out the technology, or, well, first, do you agree or disagree with that statement? Or was it just figuring out this foundational technology and then, really putting it all together in that last stretch? Or what are your early memories of working on the first game? Gavin, we can start with you and then go around again.
Okay, so when I arrived, like I say, I was there was only a few people on it. There was only a few people on it, full stop, actually. That's the point. So at that point, Paul and Toby had been working on it, I think about 6 months, but that didn't, back then, they had to build every 3D engine up from scratch. So Paul had basically been working on the 3D graphics. So it's the sort of thing you get day one nowadays by just booting up Unreal or something. But he put that together. He worked on the tooling to get models out of the animation package. Toby had been working on sort of some previs type stuff and got the model. The model of Lara was pretty much as she appeared in the game, apart from she had black eyes because she was wearing her glasses at that point.
Yeah.
But that was something we went, this isn't working, is it? It looks stupid. She looks like she's got panda eyes, so I think that's why the glasses disappeared. But other than that, I think she was pretty much identical. And I saw, Toby had done some previous things, of a kind of early one that was Lara looked more like Vasquez out of Alien. She was just wearing combat pants and stuff running down her. But I never saw anything to suggest she was ever a man. So people are always talking about, she started off as a man, but there was never any evidence of that I ever saw. All the concepts were of Lara pretty much as she appeared.
Really?
All the concepts
that was very early on.
Yeah, Toby put out a lot of concept art, didn't he? And lots of sketches what were kind of spread across the wall, and it was always Lara Croft as people know her. And
I think the original
some inspiration from Tank Girl, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I think the whole male rumour started because the original, one of the things that got Toby a job at Core was this animation that he did, which was just like a white background with really simple pencil art, and it was like a little Indiana Jones guy. And he was sort of swinging around and jumping and climbing up pillars, but it was all done in a really simple form. And I think that was like the original catalyst for Tomb Raider. And the whole can it be a man thing, that came from the original design meeting that we had at a hotel where we went off-site, and it was like a brainstorming session for new games for the studio. And it was like basically Toby pitched Tomb Raider, everybody loved it, but certain people weren't sure if it should be a girl or a guy, basically.
So it was very short-lived. There was, because this is interesting, because it is almost like this myth, like larger than life. How did Lara Croft come to be at this point, right? And I have heard, and in multiple interviews, that there was this debate about whether or not a female character could, carry this game and so on. So it was basically just that one meeting, and that's where it was decided, and it was Lara since then.
Very, very late on, actually. Probably about 6 months before we released. There was one of the territories came back, their marketing people, I think it was France, going, we're not sure about having a woman as the main character.
Okay.
So Jeremy asked the question, could you swap her out? Could you make it a choice? I'm like, no, it's way too late. Anyway, by that point, we were all totally like, no, we are doing this game with this female character, which at the time was kind of rare. Strong.
I mean, by then, the public were already in love with Lara, weren't they? I mean, she'd been in magazines 6 months before launch.
No, not Tomb Raider 1. Tomb Raider 1 was...
Really?
Tomb Raider 1, we spent most of the project sitting there, every time a magazine came out, it would have a little preview, a little picture about this big and Tomb Raider and whatever Studio had written about the game.
Yeah.
Just verbatim, and it's like, okay. No one really paid attention until E3. It was E3 because I'd got hold of one of the early Voodoo 3D effects cards, the first accelerated PC graphic. Because people forget it was software rendered back then. And it looked, so I got this thing working, I got the thing, it was quite easy to get working. And they'd taken that out with one computer with that card in it, showing it running on 3D accelerated graphics, which was brand new for that time. And for the time, it looked amazing running at that kind of, because it was running at full frame rate, very smooth and all that. And I saw some video of people out at E3, so we didn't get to go to E3, obviously, because, we were working on the game. But the people who did filmed this thing, and it was just this mass of people around this one computer, all sort of trying to get in and, have a look at it. So they put it on more computers, apparently. Then the magazines got interested. So that was probably 4 months or so before the end of the project. Suddenly the interest started growing. It was hard to tell because we were so sort of heads down trying to get the damn thing finished that
I just remember it. It definitely hit before we'd finished developing that, and the whole male thing. Toby was really adamant, because there was a couple of people internally, weren't there? I don't know if it was Jeremy or Adrian, or I can't remember who it was, but it was they were a bit unsure about the female aspect of that, and he was very adamant. No, it's got to be a female, and it's got to be Lara.
Yeah, I think we all it was interesting at working on the project. We all became very protective of the whole Lara thing. Before Lara became a thing, I didn't. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how I she was a really important thing in the game and all that, and we'd all kind of fall in love with Lara in a sort of weird way, even before the game came out.
It's true.
I can remember for the Japanese territory, it was suggested to give her manga eyes. To give her manga style eyes, or a general face to be manga style. And again, that was
Toby
that is mental.
And made the most outrageous face ever for that. He gave her massive eyes like an alien.
They're like,
no, can't do that. It's like, the idea.
I think she did get a manga makeover just for some promotion art, right? There are some out there, but I think we're all happy the way that she turned out. That's really interesting to hear, because I know one of the first things that was out there even before the game was out was that Sega Mean Machines comic, which was one of the first. She was in a comic strip in the Sega Mean Machines game magazine before that was the first piece of canon out there before the game was even out. So it's already there was this, and then Game Informer put her on the cover with the really short red hair, and so there was obviously interest building around this character before the game even came out. But it's fascinating to hear how quickly it was kind of landed on that she was going to be this woman. That's super cool. So what were each of your roles during TR1? I know, Richard, you're kind of you've been on and off and then working on different aspects of the game and so on. So Gavin, you were with Tomb Raider 1 from the beginning, right? So what was your official title? Not that titles really meant much then, right?
So back then, I mean, one thing to get over, I think people just don't get about core design is it was more like being at school than job.
It was.
Back then, back then, the best way I could describe it, I was thinking about this the other day, the best way I can describe it is more like we were all putting on a school play. There was only two tiers.
Yeah.
You were either management, which was like the teachers, or you were development, which was everybody else.
Okay.
And so when people hear about Toby Gard, they often think nowadays he was like Spielberg or something. And he had no say over the project. That's not right. He had positive, but we were all equal on the team in that sense. So if Toby put forward an idea, me and Paul would be like, that's stupid, Toby, we're not doing that. Or, you know, whatever. It was just like someone putting on a school play and having to persuade you to build the set the way they wanted it. He had such a vision, though. He got us all going in the right direction. So we all kind of, you know, there's the different parts starting to come together. But it's just that idea that I don't think people get. It was like, you know, from the core of the game, 6 of us sat in a room arguing like cats and dogs about what was going to go on the screen and where it was going to go and things like that. So yeah, I was a programmer. That was it. There was only 2 classes. You could be a programmer or an artist. No designer. No one was a designer because you were the guys you were the team. The team designed the game. Every game.
Yeah.
It was kind of what, you know, years before Call went, maybe we should have some people who are just doing design all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
it's true.
Heather and Neil, artists who just designed, built, textured, lit the entire levels, and these guys, you know, Jamie and Rich were doing that on, you know, the other projects as well. So it's just
that's amazing.
That's true.
So is there a piece of Tomb Raider 1 that you feel particularly proud of or have ownership over? You feel like you really left your mark in, Gavin?
Well, absolutely. The room editor was my big contribution. That was because, like I say, I was just sort of like, oh, how are you going to do the environments? And at that point, Heather was just building something in 3D Studio. That was it, the one that came for Mac. And it was just back then, because remember, no 3D graphics accelerator, so it was just line drawing. That's how it drew in 3D, you know, like something out of Tron or something. So she was trying to show me the level that she'd sort of tried to build. Yeah. And she was kind of zooming in. It was just lines all over the screen. She was going, I think we're in the room at the moment. I'm not really sure. And it was like, and the only way she could visualise is to press render, and it sat there for about like 10 minutes as it went down the screen and went, oh yeah, we're in the room now. So that was the starting point. I was like talking to Paul, like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to get that way? These are 1995 computers and stuff as well. So I suddenly had this brainwave of doing, let's do it on a grid, because I played Ultra Underworld, and that was based on a grid. And I thought, I never really realised it was a grid when I was playing it, which is mad when you look at it now. It's like the opposite. But at the time, you know, we were simple people back then. Anything impressive. So to me, I hadn't noticed, and then I thought, oh, grid, yeah, I can imagine how we could make it on a square checkerboard, and that way, you know, you can do the height of each bit, and that's easy to detect Lara against. And Paul was like, oh yeah, that makes it easier for me to do Lara.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing.
Find all those moves now. She can jump up high, she can jump over that space. Yeah, and it all kind of, it felt, that has always felt to me the point at which Tomb Raider went from, this is going to happen to, this might actually work. We suddenly had something that kind of, you know, could actually start happening. So yeah, that was a long answer to the question.
But it's amazing how, like from the editor and having that grid base, how that informed like the rest of the game really, you know, like through like the animations and how Lara moves to a jump, you walk to the edge of the block, you take a hop back. If you run and jump, you know you're going to make that jump.
Exactly.
Like it informed like the entire control scheme as well, and which through now, like speaking to friends at the time, like when it's like, oh, like my dad played Tomb Raider. You know, I used to watch him play Tomb Raider, and they weren't necessarily playing lots of games, but for whatever reason you're like, oh, I must play Tomb Raider, and friends have said that like when their dad was playing, like that control scheme that people had, like that safety net, you could, if you walk to the edge, you couldn't fall off the edge.
Hop back.
If you take a hop, if you could take a hop back and then make a running jump, that you would do you would make that jump successfully. So I think I think it really hits like a nerve, I guess, or you're like in people that it's like I can play this game, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe for people who wouldn't necessarily maybe play the game like that, you know, before. It's 3D, it's going to be really complicated controls. Of course, there's still some complications, but I think just with that grid system and the controls, it was like super good, for the time.
Yeah.
It's like amazing controls.
Yeah, I always remember Toby saying that he wanted it to be like a 3D Prince of Persia, so because that had similar sort of safety mechanics in there, didn't it? You know, just to stop you from
huge influence for it. That was
definitely.
His basic pitch for it was 3D Prince of Persia.
Yeah,
which sounds weird.
Absolutely,
there has been 3D Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
Prince of Persia was a 2D game,
Yeah.
and you can see lots of that influence in it if you're looking at the game. You've got the spike traps and all that.
Absolutely,
straight out, and the spikes on the ground. They're all straight out Prince of Persia, essentially.
Yeah, I totally agree though that language, it was almost, it did teach fans like a way to play, and there was like that safety net there. You're like, if you walk to the edge, jump back, do a running jump, then you can make this kind of a leap versus this one, and it's like you could analyze the world because you knew the language that Lara could traverse in. So yeah, that safety net was
exactly like it's a good point here, that analyzing the world. Yeah, you could look around and see. It's like I can make that jump because the language was clear. If you could, tell like that's too many blocks away. I can jump whatever. I can jump 3 blocks if I do a running jump. But that looks like it's 4 blocks away. So
where else can I go? Look around. Yeah,
exactly.
It's amazing.
It encourages you to look around and explore. Yeah.
Okay, how about for you, Richard? What were you? Oh, go ahead, Gavin.
I'm sorry. One of the things I was going to say about that was. What I also thought about is with Tomb Raider is that Lara really was independent in that game. We didn't build the environment going, oh, you can go there and you can go there or whatever. I mean, obviously that was true. But if Jamie, when he was doing testing on Tomb Raider 1 or 2, could find a way to jump and grab on something that Lara wasn't supposed to get to, we had to change the level because that's how it worked. Lara could go wherever. Lots of speedrunners since then have found ways through levels that weren't designed because Lara will catch on to that. If that's within reach, she will catch on to it. And if someone works out, I can jump that way and I will be able to catch on to it, she will do it. We haven't got any. Whereas a modern game, they go, oh, it's all got to be. You can go there for that one that looks like you can catch on to. Well, we're not allowed to go that way, so you just drop to your death like you do in lots of games nowadays where that happens.
I always felt so accomplished though when I found a way to like go somewhere I wasn't supposed to. Like, no, I think I can make that. I know I'm not supposed to go that way, but I feel like Lara can do it. That's so funny to hear. So Richard, for you, what was your focus at the time when Tomb Raider 1 was being worked on, and when did you sort of roll onto the franchise full time?
I mean, Tomb Raider 1, I was serving as like creative director for the studio at that point. So I was in and out of lots of projects that were being developed, and I was mostly in certain like design meetings for the first Tomb Raider, but not a lot of them, but I was in more like the level design stuff. I always remember sitting in the room upstairs and Toby would be saying, we need this level and it's going to be like a giant toilet, and everybody's like, what? And that obviously became the system.
I was going to say, that's the only thing okay, that makes sense.
And how he described it, he wanted certain parts to fill up with water, certain parts to empty, and I can still remember the look on Gavin's face when he was saying all this stuff, because at that point we didn't have the way to do that with different water levels.
That level was a nightmare, because when Heather first made that level, when the level designers they finished, they gave it to the rest of us to have a play, and I was the first person to play the system for whatever reason. And I ran into the level, did a jump, picked up a key, unlocked the door, and I was out the level. And I went, Heather, I don't think this is what you planned, is it? And she's like, oh my god, oh, this level's a nightmare, because it was all that puzzle. Because it's a little Chinese box, that level. And so I spent that's the level I had probably most involvement on Tomb Raider 1 was sitting with Heather as we went back and forth and went, well, if the water's up there, you should be able to gonna have to change that. And it was a nightmare getting that working, but
I always remember Gav was the person who, he was sent in to pretty much sanity check every level. Because Tomb Raider 2, I decided to kind of step away from the creative director part. I wanted to get back into development because I was just yearning for it. And an opportunity came on Tomb Raider 2 to develop a level, so I jumped at that one. I don't know if we're talking about Tomb Raider 2 yet, but
organically we can.
Temple of Xi'an.
That's it. Temple of Xi'an,
yeah.
And, apparently, a lot of fans regard it as being a good level, but it was actually twice as big as what it ended up in the final game.
Wow.
And Gav made me chop it in half.
No, the thing was, so that happened on Tomb Raider 2. We're jumping ahead here, aren't we?
Oh, it's okay.
On Tomb Raider 2, we had a very short time period to build the game.
Yeah.
And about 4 months in out of 10 months to do it, Heather and Neil were like, we've only built 2 levels each and there's 16 levels to build, we can't do it.
Yeah.
So we had to draft in a couple of extra people. We got Rich and we got Pete Duncan.
Pete Duncan, yeah.
He did Barkham Monastery. So they're 2 classic levels. But the point about them was we got them on to build 2 or 3 levels each and they only built 1 each.
They only did 1
bloody time on their 1 level.
Yeah.
But they made a really, really, really good level, you know, because they put tons of time into it. And Richard's level, when he first delivered it, was so hard. He tuned everything to, you know, it was... Temple of Xi'an is quite a difficult level anyway. But
it is.
Shooting to the max, you know. I've been playing this game non-stop for 2 years, and I was like, oh my god! You know, all move, you fell in the lava, all sorts. So it kind of had a pass from me, and a pass from Heather, you know, trying to tone it down, but that ended up, therefore, it had... Rich spent 3 months on it, Heather and me both spent, you know, several days, or probably spent another week or more on it. Tuning, and ended up obviously with a very, very, very. And it always made me think, it would have helped if we probably had more people on the project from the beginning. At times, doing every level.
Yeah.
I remember that we developed quite a few new traps for that level, and I'm so glad that Neil took some of those traps and transplanted them into the earlier levels, because people would get used to those traps earlier on.
Yeah, the learning curve.
I think that was the problem. There was all this new stuff in that level, and nobody was used to any of it. We've got like these giant rolling blades and all sorts, like loads of stuff. And you know, Neil managed to take some of that and put it really early on, so people were sort of used to experiencing those traps. Even though I think in Temple of Xi'an they were like notched up.
Yeah.
The level in difficulty. It was
It had everything. It had lava, it had crazy traversal where you could fall to your death. It had those statues were so scary when they came to life. And they were so...
I think there's a kitchen sink in there somewhere. To be honest.
I can't remember, when I...
Go ahead, Jamie.
So I can remember when I was first testing that level. I think it was used previous to that, but I think that level in particular had the most times, I think, where you had to, you climb up a wall and you had to jump, twist, like backflip off the wall, twist in midair, and to catch like the ladder on the opposite, behind you essentially. And some of that obviously got very tricky. Like you obviously climb up the ladder, and then there obviously was the kind of like a dead end. It's like, oh, I don't know. And obviously try to look behind. It's like, aha, I need to do a backflip and twist and catch. And obviously, like, some of those got like trickier and trickier as well. I'm sure there were some maybe traps as well we had to avoid. I can't
there was a timed one, weren't there, with the slicing traps or something like that, as far as I can remember.
I can't remember the first time I did that, but man, when you pulled off one of those backflips, twist midair, grab the ladder or the ledge, you felt so cool. Like, it was such a badass move. It was so cool to see those and make Lara feel so awesome and powerful.
Well, kind of such a change. It was already there, like you could do that in the game, but it was such a change to where you had to do it now.
Yeah.
It took a while to kind of get your brain around. It's like, okay, so I need to climb, jump, twist, grab, to put those sequences in the correct order. You're like, obviously you kind of messed up on the twist sometimes with the timing or the grab, but it was good fun once you got.
I think
that
if you were
down,
playing that, if you were playing it on PC with the keyboard, you'd basically break your fingers if you tried to pull that.
Okay, so Jamie, let's set your context for you then. So what was your focus on Tomb Raider 1, and what were like some of the, I don't know, the best memories you had while working on that game?
I guess, yeah, like at the time, obviously, like in tests, so yeah, just trying to find problems and being the general pain, I guess. You know, when you get given the level and then it's like, okay, play it, and you kind of try to find some bugs if you can, you know, that kind of, it's like, oh, there will be bugs, you know. So as well as finding bugs, there was, you know, I think in general in QA we would give some feedback too on just kind of like, you know, ammunition or health pickups, maybe what could be added here and there. Most of that was pretty good, but now and again, like it needed an extra health pickup or ammunition in some cases.
And the safe crystals as well, they were quite integral to the first
safe crystals were really important, obviously, to have a safe crystal at a good spot where you didn't have to backtrack too much, and ideally approaching maybe a tricky part of the level if it's like a tricky sequence of jumps or traps or just a boss fight or enemies and things like that. And then I guess a bit like what Gavin mentioned on the system, you're like finding those kind of shortcuts or unintended shortcuts in the levels. I can remember, I think it was what's the name of the level with the Midas, Temple of Midas.
Alice Midas.
Oh,
with the Midas hand. The same kind of thing. You could do a sneaky jump, grab onto a ledge, and then climb up, but you missed out half the level.
Oh, okay.
You missed out a big chunk of the level. You didn't hit like a trigger.
A trigger, yeah.
Like a trigger at the right, obviously when you should have to if you approach that room from the correct direction. So like suddenly like something's not working, or you're like the level, I don't know what to do now. Then obviously you're like chatting to the team, like with Toby, it's like, oh, how did you manage to do that? Like, that's not possible. It's like, oh, but you just do it like this. It's like, oh, no. You know.
So were you guys happy when you saw Jamie coming? Or were you just like, no? You were the bearer of bad news, Jamie.
He was the bane of everybody's life on Team Model 2 when we were getting Skidoo working. Because the Skidoo, he was supposed to spend, and we had, Neil had built with all these pits and stuff, and then the testers just kept, I think they took it in turns, drew straws to come and tell us they broke the Skidoo again.
I think out of all the vehicles, on Team Raider 2, the Skidoo was the main one what had its issues, I guess.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That was a tricky thing.
So we're just going to skip all over. That's fine. So I'm curious, like, at what point in time did you guys, because like vehicles were a game changer, right? And now they're like, they were such a big part of the franchise and so on. So like, how did that come about, and how did that change things from like a level design standpoint and a tech standpoint, and obviously testing, because it's a whole new way of getting around, and I'm sure Lara could launch herself where she's not supposed to be on those skidoos and so on.
Stuart Atkinson claims the first vehicle because what he did, he came on to sort of replace Toby as the animator from 2002, and he had this idea that it'd be cool to have vehicles, and he essentially the root of Lara's body, when it's all joined together, is her bum. Basically. Yeah. And he just turned that into a big vehicle. Motorbike. I think he turned that into a motorbike.
Yes, exactly.
I remember.
And then she just ran around just like she does at the moment, but the motorbike, and it was like, oh yeah, that kind of works, doesn't it? Oh, and he did an animation, especially with her just sitting. Yeah. So instead of a run animation, she was sitting on this thing and moved it around. It was like, oh yeah, could do that. Come on, you could do that. I mean, the main thing we discovered with the vehicles was just the levels had to be so much bigger. And the other thing was, what was original, well, relatively original for that time, was making it, because if she was going to have vehicles, we had it that she had to not just spend the whole level on the vehicle, she had to be able to get on it and off it, back onto it. And we went mad on that with both of the vehicle levels. We ended up going, well, let's have 2 boats, let's have lots of skidoos, you can keep, but so that was the biggest thing, but that was quite original for the time to be able to get on and off the vehicles. Kind of Halo and that started doing it as well.
There was nothing like it. It was nothing at all.
I wanted a horse, by the way. I wanted a horse in Tomb Raider 2.
Amazing.
Stu just went, I don't know how to animate that. So.
Yeah.
And it all worked out. She was going to, the horse would have a slight independent thing. So if you rode towards an edge, the horse wasn't going to jump off. It would just stop, and you'd be thrown over the.
I love it.
Unfortunately that didn't happen. So we ended up, and the same with the motorbike. The motorbike was okay, but if a motorbike, if it falls over, what do you do? So we're going to have it. Yeah. So we ended up. That's why it ended up being a skidoo. Yeah.
That's interesting. All right. So let's lay the groundwork. We'll take a step back and lay the groundwork for Tomb Raider 2. So how did you guys start working on Tomb Raider 2? Was there I know it was very rushed. Was there a milestone development plan? Did you guys just start going? Did you know what you wanted to do and change and add? Or was it just this is successful, let's make more of it? How did that process start?
So, we finished Tomb Raider 1, November-ish of 96, wasn't it? And that didn't end for people like me and Paul, because we had to finish off getting language versions and versions for demos and all that. So I carried on it till about Christmas. And so what happened was, you were probably involved in that, Rich, but they started thinking about Tomb Raider 2 levels for Tomb Raider 2. So I wasn't really involved in that. There was already plans going on in the background while I was still plugging away trying to finish off Tomb Raider 1. Toby had decided he didn't want to work on Tomb Raider 2.
Mm-hmm.
Paul was he was going to work with Toby. I was also thinking I was going to work with Toby. So 3 of us out of the 6 had sort of decided, for 6 core people, decided we probably weren't going to work on it. We were all sat in a different room. And so they got in some extra people to flesh out the team. But after the Christmas, I came back and decided, no, I was definitely going to work on Tomb Raider 2. Toby at that point was in a sort of bad way in terms of he was clearly wanting out, and I thought, I don't. So I kind of moved into the other room with the other guys, and it was a good job because honestly, it was a bit of a hole in the team because with half us gone and both the main gameplay programmers gone, they were kind of slightly all at sea. They were starting to build levels, but what do they do? So I kind of came in and went, okay, well, we've got to do this, got to do that. And before I knew it, I was kind of essentially picking up the reins from Toby, not quite in the same way, but on Tomb Raider 2, I ended up being the guy. Certainly, if Jez had a question, he'd be like, "Gav, what's going on?" Or if we needed something on the team, they'd all push me out the door to go and negotiate it or whatever. So I became kind of, although I was still programmer, I called myself lead programmer in the credits because we got to choose. I called myself God, I think. But I didn't.
Code God.
But I didn't. But anyway, my role was generally almost like a project lead on it. So that's what I kind of did on Tomb Raider 2. Because suddenly I had to do all the gameplay variant because Paul had gone because we'd shared it on Tomb Raider 1. Suddenly I was doing it all on Tomb Raider 2. So that's why I was stressed out of my head and sort of wide-eyed by the end of the Tomb
So I'm curious, how did you guys start much production on the Saturn version, or was it just you guys knew it was just PlayStation at that point?
It started, Jason was still on it, so Jason was the third programmer. He worked pretty much exclusively on getting the Saturn version working. And so he was going to start getting it working for Tomb Raider 2, but then I can't remember when, but suddenly, very early on, it was like, Sony have done the exclusive deal. Sony exclusive
PlayStation
now.
was
stop it.
Laura's ours. Yeah.
There was some preliminary looking into N64.
Yeah.
Nintendo, people talk about that. The biggest thing with Nintendo is we already worked out we needed the biggest cartridge they made.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't going to fit.
Okay.
And the biggest cartridge is, Nintendo had this fantastic business plan where the developers all had to pay for the cartridges up front by the ton, And if you didn't sell them, well, tough luck, guys. That was a great business plan from their point.
They get buried in the desert like Atari ET.
Yeah. So we've had to buy these massive, great, most expensive cartridges ever, and hopefully we've sold more. Anyway, it didn't happen. So
did it make it a little easier for you guys to just focus on the PlayStation version then, and since you had such a limited amount of time?
The PlayStation was much easier. The Saturn, like I say, Jason had been on Saturn the whole project because it was such a pain to create.
Yeah.
Because the Saturn was not really quite designed for the 3D world. It had been, they designed it for 2D games, and then got caught out by the PlayStation and got, oh, okay. And so they slapped in a second processor and all sorts to try and make the Saturn sort of 3 compete with the PlayStation. So it just was a nightmare to work.
Yeah.
But it fell by the wayside quite quickly.
Okay. So aside from vehicles, what were like big things that you guys knew you wanted to change going into tier 2? Also, fans were obviously like very excited that Lara got her ponytail. Like that was that an early thing? Was that?
So it was more moves, wasn't it? It
was.
What can we make her do now?
Yeah, Tomb Raider 1, the level designers have been a bit stuck on what they could do. So pools of water in Tomb Raider 1, if you look at them, you've got to dive into them because Lara doesn't have any way of walking around in water or paddling around. So and the level designers are like, we want to be able to do kind of sloping water, and so we put in all the moves for Lara being able to move at different depths of water. The other one was, Neil and Heather were like, we spend a lot of time building ways for Lara to gain height. She can drop very quickly, but our levels always have these kind of big steps to get you up in the level.
Yeah.
So I wanted a climb move to sort of quickly get her up to height so that she can then start doing all the jumps and stuff to go down there. What else was there? Can't remember. Filling out a lot of the moves so that Stu's one was he hated the fact in Tomb Raider 1 that Toby had made it so that Lara only took off when her foot was on the ground for a jump.
Yeah.
Meant if you ran towards an edge and you were like a cool player, you hit jump and she just went ah. So in Tomb Raider 1 2 he made it so she could take off at any point during her cycle, and that just suddenly you could run around the levels if you were good enough and just time it all, just tap tap tap.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jamie became an expert at that. But, so it was that kind of thing. I can't remember what else. And the hair was something like
There was weapons, weren't they? Some of the weapons were quite cool that were added. And did we introduce the flares in Tomb Raider?
Yeah, sorry, the dynamic lighting. That
was a biggie.
That was awesome.
Yeah. I've got a funny one about the flares actually. The Yeti room, that's quite well known. That came about when I played that level. Heather had lit that room just as normal. But I was getting a bit pissed off because I put in the, so I shouldn't say that. I was getting a bit annoyed. Because they hadn't used the flares a great deal. There wasn't many places to use them. I thought, this room would work. You could take out all the lights, make it pitch black. It'd be cool, wouldn't it? So I took out all her lights. And when she took the level back, she went, the lighting's all disappeared in that room. I went, no, that's my idea. I want it to be all dark. So it went out pitch black because that was an excuse to use the flares. Yeah, so
much more terrifying that way. Like the ambience of it was just like, the flares did add a lot. So there was also the grenade launcher, which was probably not intended to be hilarious, but it kind of was because like everybody just exploded into a bunch of chunks. What else was there? A lot more action packs or a lot more human enemies. Was that a conscious decision? And how did that affect like layouts and testing Jamie and all of that? Because obviously you've got much more AI with the animals and the humans and all of that.
Yeah, and the AI attacking each other. That was quite a cool thing where you could just set a load of AI off and watch them fight each other to the death, and you'd just stand there, hiding, and they'd be dead.
That came about because Josh Charmay, who was doing the animation, he put in a monk. The monks were meant to be the good guys.
Yeah.
One day he went to me, I've done the monks, look, they got fighting sticks. I was like, but we're not going to be fighting them. Lara's not going to fight the monks. What are you doing? We're not going to a monastery and killing all the monks. That would be insane. And he was like, but they look really cool. It's like, that's where that came from. It's like, I suppose you could make them fight the bad guys and then you could have them. And so and it was easy enough to make him do that. So that's what I did and made him go, all right. So that's how things got put into Tomb Raider. We just had this, let's do this stuff. Winston's the same. Winston, 2 weeks before we went gold,
wow.
Joss had run out of things to do, and he went, it'd be cool if she had a butler, wouldn't it? And I was like, Lara and a butler? She doesn't really seem a butler kind of person, but I suppose she could have inherited one. And so he literally built her in a day, 2 days, because he's only got 2 animations. He walks or he stands there rattling his tray.
Yeah.
And then I put him in half of the... I mean, he's got his control code, it's just this tiny little script that just goes...
follow Lara around.
Yeah, follow Lara around. Oh no, that's the funny thing. Winston, in the game code, all the enemies are either violent or timid, I think they are.
Okay.
Violent ones will not run away if you shoot at them, and timid ones will make a run for it. Because he tracks you down, he's violent.
Okay, that's hilarious. Man, that's super cool. So when you guys were testing things with like Winston and all that, just makes me think of Croft Manor. So did you guys realize that you'd be able to do things like lock him in the freezer and that become a thing, or like the corner bug that people used in, like I always used it in Croft Manor to get to the top of the manor because I thought that was super cool to see the whole grounds. Like, did you guys know about those, and did you choose to just kind of?
The corner bug we kind of learned about late-ish. Yeah. And I fixed it and broke a whole bunch of things in the levels.
And you just like leave it.
So it was in some way related to, I can't remember the exact detail, but it was some way related to certain jumps that really Lara shouldn't have been able to do. But because designers like Richard that had used the limits of her capabilities at that point, I fixed it and went, there we go. And then immediately Heather went, well,
it broke everything.
The levels broke. I
think it's where we... Because to build big areas, we had to like join multiple rooms together, and I think a lot of the sort of Lara control books came in where it was on a room join, either on an outer corner or an inner corner, or even rooms stacked up on rooms, and it would do all sorts of craziness, wouldn't it? She didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
So that's where my brother could have a lot of fun breaking stuff, and the rest of the testing team.
I think the Winston thing, I'm sure we discovered that, right? I think it was just like, oh, let's trap him in this room, and it's like, it's fine. It was kind of a fun thing. If you happen to think about doing it, you can do it, and then if you feel bad, then you open the door for him and let him follow you around again.
Yeah, I love it. So you guys probably didn't.
It's not worth. Why would this fix? It's not really worth fixing, right?
No.
It's like it's fine. Just it's like you can do it, and
it became this sort of like emergent gameplay and one of the biggest nostalgic memes in all of gaming. I mean, like that's it's so funny how that kind of stuff, ends up taking on a life of its own. I love that. Okay, other questions we have some from fans. Generally speaking, so for Tomb Raider 2, how did you guys feel like it was difficulty-wise? Were you guys like, let's make this harder on the player? And there was like lots of traps and stuff like that. I feel like, Gavin, you said in an interview at one point in time that you guys got like the burner hall resulted, or the burner hall in particular and the Maria Doria resulted in like fan mail just saying, why would you do this to me? Why? So what was the thought with the difficulty there?
I've got it kicking around somewhere. The letter is just so funny. We never got any of the fan mail. I never made it past IDOS, but this particular one, because it's addressed arrived on my desk, and I opened it up, and it's this person going, "Oh, Mr. Rummery!"
Oh, you personally
went through the whole thing. He went, "I'm 66, Mr. Rummery. This could be the last game I ever play." I got to the burner hall sequence and kept dying. If you want, psychological torture or something. I was like, oh my god. Okay. But the thing about that was the toned down version. The first version of that I played, which I think probably I was the only person who ever played, was Neil delivered it. He had taken that timer down to the second. And I ran round it, and all the corridors at that point looked exactly the same. And those kind of lights on the floor that you had to jump over that stop you dead. There was about at least half a dozen of them on every corridor. And there was if you chose the wrong corridor to run down, or you did anything wrong, you couldn't do it. It took me 30 attempts, and I was by this point an expert playing the game, to finish this thing. I went to Neil, that's too hard. They're not doing like that. And so I added more time, and then it got to the testers, and they went, this is too hard. We must have added like a minute to the time you had. We made the corridors all look a bit different. We took out half those things off the floor. And then it went out and people went, "Oh, that's too hard." And it's like, wow.
Was that your expert opinion too, Jamie? Were you like, this is too hard, or our player is gonna not be able to beat this?
Yeah, I think that in particular was super difficult. It's like, this can't be a thing.
I think that there was a large portion of the people who just saved their medipacks and then just kept healing themselves and trying to finish the level while on fire. I think I have done that myself, at least. Well, I also did the cheat to get the medipacks, so yes, there were ways around it if you didn't mind using the cheat codes. That's fascinating. How about just inspirations? So lots of, the locations in TR2 were so cool, right? So the Maria Dora is like my favorite level in all classic Tomb Raider. I think that's fantastic. But people were wondering, like, was that inspired by the Titanic? Was that inspired by just a specific ship or so on? Like, what were the inspirations for some of these really unique levels?
So, yeah, Titanic, basically.
Yeah.
On Tomb Raider 1, effectively, we had free choice to go anywhere, couldn't you?
Yeah.
But Tomb Raider 2 is like, well, we need to start sort of scraping a little bit of places people don't know as well, certainly in the West, you know. So we had China, because that was, that's got a lot of ancient stuff, a little less common. But one of the things I think Neil and Heather came up with was they wanted to do some slightly different stuff, but they also came up with the idea of a modern tomb, and a modern tomb, Titanic is a modern tomb in this way. Yeah. Not one built on purpose, but obviously that's the point. So that's where that idea came from. And I think the Titanic had only been found 5 years or so before we made the game. But anyway, they discovered that it was broken in half, of course. You know, it wasn't, when they first found it, they'd gone along going, wow, hang on, half of it's missing. It took them like 2 years to find the other half, I think. So that idea of having two halves. And then Neil went, I love the Poseidon Adventure, and that's an upside down ship. Yeah. So he decided one half is going to be upside down. And I don't know why one half's in the cave. I think that's just because that's convenient, because he wanted you to run around on the deck. So you end up with this thing of like, wow, quite a disaster that shit, wasn't it? You know, who knows what happened? This ship broke in half. But I think one of the bits I always loved about that was that, I can't remember how it came about, that idea of starting you in the level underwater. So the players, what's the little FMV if you're going down on the boat? What are you going to do? And then we just went,
surprise.
You're underwater and your health bar goes down. What are you going to do?
You're not just underwater, you're underwater. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, that was great because there was a shark as well, right?
Yeah.
Kind of hanging around that part of the water. So yeah, if you kind of didn't get a move on, one, you had your air obviously depleting, and then your health eventually. And then obviously there was the shark as well, which I kind of pressured you even more to go. Yeah, that was a really fun intro to a level, actually.
Dropping you right in it.
Different at the time.
It was a typical Neil.
It was, yeah. But I think he was quite forgiving, so it was a fun start to the level, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think early on, even though, you know, the story wasn't really fleshed out for Tomb Raider 2 in the beginning, I think one of the conscious decisions was that they wanted the locations to be a lot more driven by the story. I think in the first game it was like, what puzzle can we do in this level? How can we make this level cool? But in the sequel it was like, you know, kind of half develop a story and half develop some cool, more realistic levels like the Great Wall and, you know, the Maria Doria and
the floating islands,
the floating islands, and, you know, crazy. That's in myth.
Yeah. So that is based off of a myth that you had researched or you knew about, Richard?
So
what was
floating island, there's a bit of China where they've got the very pointy mountains. You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
When the mists and clouds come in, just the tops of them stick out of the thing, so it's the floating island. So when Heather described that, it's like you kind of get a picture in your head what that might look like. But when she came to it, because Tomb Raider 1 had ended in such crazy land, and you know, it's totally not what you were expecting the Atlantean pyramid to look like. She wanted to top that, or at least be on the same part. You know, what could she do that was weird? So she went through various different textures. It was really fretting her that what was the unique look for that thing, and she suddenly hit on this idea of them literally being floating islands and being made of jade and all this, and that in turn left her going, well, how are we going to do enemies then? And then we ended up with, what about statues float through the air and all this sort of madness. But no one really knows. I think one of your questions was, you know, where are the floating islands? Like, I don't know really. They're sort of meant to be a kind of chamber underneath the Great Wall, because we know the original Emperor of China, there's stuff about he's buried in a thing where they've got a lake of mercury and golden walls and stuff. So it's kind of meant to be that kind of idea, that there's this hidden chamber where. But I think in the end it ended up being more like you went through a portal into some sort of slight mystical world.
It definitely did feel more like a different world.
Yeah, it could be like one of the levels of hell from like Chinese folklore, and because I know Big Trouble in Little China was sort of around, you know, not that long before development, and probably a little bit of inspiration from that.
I love that.
With Temple of Xi'an, the main inspiration for that was Raiders of the Lost Ark, because the beginning of the level, you basically see the dagger in front of you on like a pedestal in the middle of this room, and then everything just goes to crap, and you fall down, and the whole level is you getting back to that point. Yeah, so that was my inspiration for that one.
I love that. After Tomb Raider 2, so we do have some questions about the Golden Mask too. So how involved were you guys on the Golden Mask? Because that was a pretty sizable addition to Tomb Raider 2. Was that mostly IDOS in America?
Yeah, that was that Phil Campbell.
Yeah.
I think did you do? I don't know how many you did. Certainly the first two.
Yeah.
Definitely
did a couple of them. Yeah.
And so, were you guys involved at all from a story standpoint, or did they just kind of riff off what you guys did? Like, did you give them guidelines, or was it just like you were so focused on TR3 at that point, you were just like?
Tomb Raider 1, he was around in the office, and we talked about it, and he knew therefore that the thing about Tomb Raider 1 is we ran out of time essentially, and it was supposed to have a much more spectacular ending of you escaping from the pyramid. And in the end. We were all tired and we were all running out of time. It was like the collapsing pyramid ended up being one bit of rock that drops down. I made the camera shake and it was like, oh, well, there we go, and it's finished. And she slides down a slope and it's over.
I mean, that was one of the things, if you remember, Gavin, that we kind of fleshed out for the anniversary edition. We had
something
this
more spectacular
whole end level, that would have been cool, but just didn't have time in the original.
So with the first one, Unfinished Business, two of those levels are essentially meant to be her escaping from the pyramid and being attacked and all the stuff that we talked about, which never happened. Tomb Raider 2, I don't really remember him.
It's so out there.
Back in America, he just did what he liked, really.
All right.
I can't remember too much. I can't remember too much about that one, actually.
I just remember. I remember that the Peg, quote unquote, Peg Bundy outfit was canceled because she looked so bizarre in that leopard, the leopard, like basically cat suit, which was hilarious. The screenshots exist of that. But I was just curious if you guys had any like rules, or they just kind of like got to go and do whatever fit within.
To do what they liked, and but the weird thing is they were massively restricted by the fact that they couldn't add any more code.
Yeah.
So they literally reskinned things that they could, or repurposed things that were already in the game. They could put in the graphics, but they never got any code support.
I'm sure I remember a Vegas-looking level and like an Elvis-looking character running around. I don't know if that was Laura or if it was an enemy, but
I can remember the Vegas level one.
Nightmare in Vegas. Very unique.
Elvis.
There was a T-Rex in Vegas too. So I love that.
There was pictures of Elvis on the walls and things like that. It's like, are we allowed to use Elvis Presley's like portrait like in the game?
All right. So looking at Tomb Raider 3, what were each of your roles moving into the third game, and how did that change? How did responsibility grow? Gavin, you want to start with you?
I was gone. No, I wasn't gone like that. But
that's not how I remember.
Tomb Raider 3 was a bit interesting because we started off originally, we were going to make Tomb Raider 3, and these guys, Rich and that, were supposed to be making what was called Tomb Raider 2.5.
Yeah.
It was meant to be an add-on to Tomb Raider 2, but IDOS. But Rich and that had been working on with the Tomb Raider engine for 6 months, because you were going to write a cops and robber game or something, weren't you?
It was a sci-fi game. It was like a Blade Runner game using the Tomb Raider engine, and we were about 4 months into developing that, and we even started making some like science fiction city levels, and then Gav through Jeremy asked us to start working on Tomb Raider 2.5 to kind of give Tomb Raider 3, what would have been Tomb Raider 3, a longer development cycle. So they could put more original stuff in it. And it just spiraled from there, didn't it, Gav, really? It was
it was a bit weird, because what happened was because you guys have been working on the engine for 4 months, I think Gibby had already put in the coloured lighting and all that, because you could start to
triangulation,
because you knew it was PlayStation only at that point. You could just go for it and start using PlayStation graphics, whereas we hadn't had that in the previous ones. And IDOS saw it and went, wow, it's much better to just do a full release. You know, no one buys, back then especially, DLC type things. You know, no one buys 2.5. The main thing was they didn't tell us. They just went, and we found out by accident that Tomb Raider 2.5 been upgraded to Tomb Raider 3.
All right.
They kind of took the steam out of us because we weren't
That's
ready
a weird
for that.
one. Because we didn't know that you didn't know as well. It was like a double thing. Nobody knew that nobody knew.
Wow.
But the thing was, to be honest, it was we suddenly thought, actually, we're a bit burnt out on this because we worked on it so hard for 2.5. And with that news, and it was like, okay, because we were struggling. We weren't. The ideas weren't flowing about this new Tomb Raider. It was going to be set on an island, interestingly. I was going to go to an island, and Stu was going to go exploring that island and solving a mystery. But that's about as far as we ever got, really, because we were sort of talking about the PlayStation 2 tech and all that. I still think, though, had we actually stuck with it, and actually Heather and Neil could have gone and worked on Tomb Raider 3 and things like that, it would have worked, because as those guys came off Tomb Raider 3, the whole group of us could have come together. We'd have got the Tomb Raider 3 tech already working to a level, and then all of us, and probably our history would have been different, hopefully.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
A big team, all knowing what we were doing, working on new tech, PlayStation 2, but that isn't what happened.
So did anything from...
I went off and worked on Project Eden, that's what I did, which no one cares about.
Did anything from 2.5 make it into tier 3? Like, were any of those ideas carried forward, or were they just kind of too ambitious with the teams having to switch focus so quickly?
No, 2.5 was 3. That's it.
It just changed completely into tier 3.
Yeah, it's like we basically we did the typical thing of think of some cool locations. Jurassic Park had been out not long before, and we'd already had a T-Rex in the first Tomb Raider, and we just thought, how can we work that in? So we had like the island in the South Pacific, and
the compies.
We had India, that was Heather's level. Heather stuck on what became Tomb Raider 3, because she'd already started building this gorgeous Indian temple, which was just amazing. So we worked that in. We wanted that to be in there, and Neil, he was also working on Area 51, and we thought, I think it was a military base at that point, and then we decided to make it Area 51. And he'd got it built most of that level out, apart from the UFO in the chamber, which I kind of made by accident. I found this weird room bug where you could trick the engine into creating doorways into different rooms.
Yeah.
And I bet Gav's glad he was out of the door by then, because that was a real fluke, but somehow it worked. So I thought, I'll just make this tiny little UFO, and you climb up a ladder in the bottom of it, and you appear in this massive spaceship. But the rest of the Area 51 level was Neil's invention. We had a few starting points with that, and then obviously we went in there and designed the rest. The main things we did really was introduce the triangulation, which caused a lot of bugs, far too many bugs. And more vehicles, more weapons, more moves.
More moves, so how did those affect things? So there was like the monkey swing, there was sprinting. Sprinting, obviously, like that's huge for timed puzzles and stuff. So like, how did that affect things? And Jamie, what was your specific title for tier 3?
So I was level designer, I guess.
So that's where you had kind of transitioned.
Like everyone else, they were building the levels. So then there was some clean, I suppose, a bit more some separations of level designer, artists, and animators and whatever, who else doing some objects, and obviously the character animations and building the characters. But so from QA, Tomb Raider 3 was my official first level design job. So I was promoted out to QA to work in Tomb Raider 3.
And what were the levels that you focused on?
So I built all of the India levels. So I took what Heather had started. So I think she had built about half of the what is actually the first India level. She had built about half of that, I think. And then, yeah, I went in and finished that level off and obviously made some adjustments here and there. Added all the secrets, which I really wanted to try to, like, get some sneaky secrets in all the levels, because I really enjoyed finding the secrets in the previous games.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to try to get some, like, good secrets in there in the levels I built. But that, I guess that promotion came about just because in QA there's times where we're not really doing too much, because either if we've come off Tomb Raider 2, there may not be another project to test at that time, so we may have like a few months or so. And also in testing, sometimes if you're waiting for builds and things like that, like you may have some kind of downtime in your day. But I think it was during Tomb Raider 2, I don't think Tomb Raider 1. Yeah, Tomb Raider 2, I got hold of the editor and just started building little, like just small little rooms or little tiny levels, just to kind of play around, making my own little textures here and there. And yeah, basically that led on to, you can use the editor now, you can build stuff. Now you're on Tomb Raider 3. So, but again, for me, it was amazing. I was 19, I think. 19, I think 19 at the time. So it was, like amazing.
That's pretty incredible. So you guys had things like you had the new moves. You also had poison and quicksand. So like, did poison affect much, or did you guys kind of use just like a similar mechanic to like being underwater? Right, it's the countdown against your health. Like, how did that affect things?
Yeah, it was really similar, really. We just wanted another way of adding like a timer, like a tension moment onto certain things that Laura did. So yeah, the poison came in, the quicksand came in, because obviously that affected everything in your movement. So yeah, just certain like extra game mechanics like that, the different vehicles. We took the skidoo and basically transformed that into the quad bike.
So fun.
The kayak was an absolute nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
It started off as really like good fun, and you could move quite quickly in it. And then it went through quite a lot of iterations to try and make it more realistic, and it ended up being this weird, clunky thing. But it worked best when you were just pelting down like waterfalls and just steering a little bit. As soon as you got onto a flat piece of water and had to, meander around in this kayak, it was a chore.
Yeah. But it added another interesting level of traversal and so on. I feel like, especially in Tomb Raider 3, but also Maria Doria in Tomb Raider 2, gave me an irrational fear of a lot of things growing up. Like, my brothers convinced me there were barracuda in our lake at home after I played Tomb Raider 2, and I was so sure there were for a long time. And, like, the piranhas and quicksand, I was, like, always looking out for quicksand in Minnesota, which there is not any there. So there was definitely a lot more traps and sort of hazards to look for. When did
the piranhas are good fun too. So I work with them, like the piranhas. Like to put those in the levels to work with them, they were good fun actually. Like just to to have some like little difficult moments of kind of run the gauntlet of cross this water before they get you kind of thing.
Adding that time element to it. Parts.
And they came in quite late. We basically had shoals of fish in the water at the beginning of the South Pacific level that were just like nice, pretty fish. And then it was like, should we introduce some deadly fish as well later on?
That's funny.
I don't think we introduced a single animal that wasn't going to attack you in it previously.
Exactly, that's it. It was deadly.
I can't remember.
All animals must kill you,
The compies, do they attack you right away, the compies? Because I feel like they just kind of followed you. I feel like maybe they didn't attack you until there was several of them. But
the compies were kind of, they were cautious. Again, they were, it was Jurassic Park, wasn't it? So
they were so
the
cute.
Compies would, if they were in smaller groups, they'd be cautious. If they got into like a mob, then they'd
They
attack
feel
you a lot
confident.
more confidently.
That's funny.
We had a guy come onto the team at that point, Tom Scott, who was a doctor of AI. So he took the stuff that had already been done, before by Gav, and just built on that really. And it was already cool, wasn't it? Because you've got enemies attacking enemies, and he just came on and amped it up really, and managed to get long creatures like the crocodiles and the raptors. They suddenly had like bend in their bodies, so they looked more natural. Just stuff like that, wasn't it? It was like a natural evolution.
Was it only Tomb Raider 3? Was it Tomb Raider 3 where we introduced where enemies could actually jump from platform to platform as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Tomb Raider 3, right? I don't think we had that previously.
Gavin would confirm that one, but I think so, yeah.
Whose idea was it to have the monkeys steal the medipacks? Because I always felt terrible.
Oh, that was awesome.
I can't remember who came up with that, yeah.
It was Heather. She wanted the macaques to be in there, and she wanted them to be cheeky and start running around and pinching your stuff and running off with keys, and
that was hilarious.
That was a nice touch. Yeah,
that was cool with stealing the medipacks. Yeah. That was good fun.
It's like one of those moral moments in the franchise where people are like, do I really need this medipack back, or should I just let it go? So sad. At what point in time did you guys decide that you could choose which way to approach the different countries in Tier 3? And did that, I guess that had to affect, everything from design and all that at some point.
I think that was quite early, wasn't it?
Early enough that
the choice.
Talked to you guys about doing it and the indication, so it was very early you made that decision.
It was, yeah. It did. To be honest, the story did suffer on Tomb Raider 3 because of that.
Oh, okay.
Because originally we were going to just have the choice of levels right from the start, and then we decided to have like an opening level, and then give them the choice. So at least it would set up the story, it would get them on the path, and then allow them to choose the levels. But those 3 mid levels, there were slightly different difficulty levels, but they were all pretty much the same. So you didn't have like the nice progression that you normally get in a story-driven game, I suppose.
But at the same time, I think fans loved that. I think that they loved the trade-off of getting a little bit more ownership over what they wanted to play. We just did a poll yesterday asking people which one did you play, in which order, and why, and everybody's got all their opinions, which it's fun to read why everybody played certain things in certain orders. And there also used to be Peru, right? When was the Peru level cut? Was there originally Peru in TR3 people, or was that just a demo? So people are saying that there was a Peru level in TR3 that they saw at like E3 or something like that.
Yeah,
so
that
was it just a demo?
Yeah. That existed only in demo form, that one, yeah.
Oh, was it just like a tech demo for some of the new stuff that you guys were showing off in TR3? Okay.
It was, yeah. I think Peru kind of evolved into the South Pacific, to be honest, yeah. We sort of just worked the story more into the South Pacific levels and used some of the assets from Peru.
Okay.
But I think, was Peru not a location in the first?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the game, isn't it? Yeah.
Peru is. I think Peru is the most visited. Other than the UK and like Lara's home, obviously. I think Peru is probably the most visited place in franchise history. So it's cool to see that Lara keeps going back to Peru. Yeah. And then so there was also the All Hallows level. Was that originally supposed to be inside St. Paul's Cathedral, and was that just moved to like a bonus level, or what was the story behind that?
Yeah, I think it was just one of those things where we just ran out of time on that one, because we had like a 12-month development period once we'd fully got working on that, and we just didn't have time to finish it. It was a huge level, that, and similar to Temple of Xi'an, we just run out of space and run out of time to tweak it and refine. So it got cropped, unfortunately.
So there were a couple of questions about cutting room floor items. So I don't know which interview this is, but a fan brought up that in an old interview from the 90s, Core Design once talked about Lara having a sidekick. Was that planned? And why or why didn't it work off? Or is that just another one of those rumored things that maybe never was thrown out once and never actually had any time put against it?
Don't remember.
Can't remember that. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Not from the original
Okay.
No.
games, anyway. Yeah. I know we brought in Melissa Croft for the
Yeah.
10th anniversary, but
Laura's
and obviously
cousin.
Curtis.
Yeah. Did you guys ever have any like absolutely wild ideas that you actually like put a little bit of time against in any of like the original 3 games that got a bit of time against them but had to be cut for various reasons or so on?
Didn't have that luxury, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Focus.
Yeah, we were running hard at it. Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly if an idea was crazy and we could get it,
If you
we
got
went
it.
in. You know,
All right.
whatever. Trampolines, let's do it.
Yeah. I can't think of anything
True.
what didn't necessarily make it. Yeah, I'm sure there must be some ideas what were
Oh, for sure.
suggested.
It was more the other way round. We just put in anything we thought of. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be cool.
So fans also
let's
wonder.
face it, Tomb Raider 1. Dinosaurs? Why not?
Yeah, and now just like the butler in the freezer, like the Lost Valley moment, that is literally, I think it still makes top 10 moments in gaming this day. Like almost every time you see that is just the camera shaking and the
Because
sound.
it's so unexpected, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just, it
It
makes
was-
no sense in that game. And I think that's what makes a lot of the Tomb Raider stuff cool is Heather and Neil used to go off and build those levels and you never really knew what you were going to find around the next corner.
I love
Nowadays
that.
people do proper research on places, but nowadays they didn't. They just had a few books from the library.
Yeah.
This is kind of pre-internet, so they just banged in everything.
Yeah.
I've heard actually your level Temple Shan, apparently you've mixed something like 5 different Chinese
Oh, I did.
eras of
Yeah, absolutely.
or something.
Yeah.
It's the timeless temple.
Well, you went through a portal, right? So like you got that
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was as genuine as Big Trouble in Little China. Put it that way.
Okay, other ones that fans are asking about. What was the reference for the picture of the lady on Bartoli's airplane in Tomb Raider 2? Do you guys remember?
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, but I think it was just a reference to like the 1950s
Sort of the nose art,
posters. You know, the airplane posters. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This is one that's actually more, I think, of a marketing question, but like fans wonder the long unanswered question: what's going on with Laura's backwards pistol in the holster of the TR2 cover? If you guys look, her pistol the handle is facing forward, the grip is facing forward. It's like incorrect. Did anyone ever bring that up to you?
No idea.
No,
Not
To be fair, like I said, it's more of
I don't think I've ever noticed that.
I mean,
It's
the guys
hilarious.
doing those kind of graphics was sort of separate to the main team, so they were doing all the kind of marketing material. So
Was that mostly IDOS, or did
Maybe
you
one
guys
of
have
the
a
next
team at Core that was doing that?
No, we had a team. It was actually Phil Chapman who did a lot of that stuff. Who came on to Tomb Raider 3, so he did a lot of those promo
Yeah, I think
covers and
Pete
stuff.
Barnard as well.
Yeah, Pete did.
Oh,
Pete did some.
I mean, he'd be the one who knew about that picture on the side of the plane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll see if we can solve it with him.
Yeah, Pete did lots of the FMV sequences.
Okay. Other question from fan: did the big guy with the 2 guns in TR2, the Fiamanera guy, have a name? Did you guys name these guys? Did they have official
I
names?
think he in the code is just like big guy or something.
Big guy?
Winston's Winston. Winston
Okay.
was named in the code.
Okay.
Yeah, his name existed because they started the marketing part by calling him Jeeves when he first peaked.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We had to go, no,
Never Jeeves.
he's got a name. He's Winston.
All
So
right.
he's correct.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Other question fans ask: are there any Easter eggs in the games that you guys contributed to that fans maybe aren't aware of?
We got loads of them, but we're just not going to tell.
Yeah.
I feel like if fans
So
haven't
many
discovered them at this
secrets.
point, they might be too good of an Easter egg. Okay. And this one is just for me, because I have no idea why. So for the 20th anniversary, we were digging through and trying to find all these assets, and I've actually been sending off Betacam tapes and all these old, like, just files, like formats that I can't even digitize. I've been sending them off to be digitized. And one of the things that we found, there's sort of this long lost render of Lara from the inside of the TR1 pyramid box. You know, I feel like she kind of looks like a claymation figure a little bit in this render. It's a very unique one. Anyway, I found an original digital file of it, but for some reason, Lara's head was missing, and she had Darth Vader's head in the place. So we scanned in the head from the box and then photoshopped it onto the body so that we would actually have a digital piece of this. was there like a joke about Darth Vader, or did everybody like Darth? Was like Star Wars was a big thing in the office at the time?
It was huge in the office, but I can't remember that.
It was so bizarre. We found the file and we're like, oh my gosh, we finally found a digital copy of this piece of art. And then like it was like
what time period was that?
That we found it, or that for the original render?
You know, I'm just wondering if it was an Andy Sandham classic, that one, because he was a proper trickster.
It could have been.
That.
Yeah.
Either that or Stuart Atkinson. You know, they were
well, maybe they'll
jokers with that sort of thing.
Watch this and
Tomb Raider 1 definitely had the most cutscenes that never made it into the game because Toby kept changing the story.
Yeah.
And that's why Neil ended up as a level designer, because he was supposed to be making the FMVs and he just went, oh, his boat thing got cancelled. He spent like 2 months and he went, that's it, I'm building levels. Yeah. We switched to level editor because he was sick and tired of Toby keep going, oh, I've decided she's going here now, she's doing this.
Yeah.
Also, he got Vicky Arnold onto the project who went,
helped focus it a bit.
Stay on track.
I was in the next office to Vicky, and it was like a constant thing of, you know, can't you do this, can't you do that? And Toby would be coming up and it'd be like, you know, would Laura do this? Would Laura do that? And it's like, no, Laura would never do that. Or yeah, she'd do this. And
I had to imagine reining it in would be so difficult, especially with that first game, just wanting to kind of achieve everything.
Yeah, like Gavin said earlier, everybody had like this personal investment in Laura, even before she was famous.
Yeah.
You know, everybody on the team, you know, just kind of fell in love with Laura in this weird, slightly creepy way, but not in a perverse way, but just like, you know, she's such a good character, and she'd got like this personality that was kind of pre-built somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So the team was collectively Laura's personality, and you know, somehow we knew what she'd do, what she wouldn't do.
Yeah, quite fit her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
I just enjoyed purposely killing her.
So many fans did.
Yeah, NQA. I think it's the level what's based around the Titanic. I think that's at the time there's a very, very, very high point, and you can like swan dive like from a very high.
Everybody
place.
did that. It's just it's so weird because fans say they love Laura so much, but then they also like every time they could, they tried making her swan dive off of like the tallest thing into concrete or something. It's so bizarre, but yeah, you're definitely not alone on that. So looking back of all the pop culture adaptations and achievements and all that kind of stuff, what most surprises each of you and like impresses you? Like what was the moment or the thing that was just kind of out of this world? Was it like the movies or getting Lara Croft Way or Guinness World Records or so on? Let's start with you, Gavin.
I guess Lara Croft Way is pretty cool to have like a road named after the character and stuff. That was pretty nice, I guess.
I want to visit someday. I haven't been there yet, but someday I will.
I think in the team it was kind of fun to have to get 3 boxes of like Lucozade. The Lucozade tie-in and stuff. You know, like we just had boxes and boxes of Lucozade like in the office at some point.
I can imagine.
That was a pretty like strange one, I guess. But pretty nice.
Yeah. How about for you two, Gavin and Richard? Like, what were those things for you that were just like, this is bigger than we ever expected?
The weirdest one for me was on Tomb Raider 2 when, I can't remember who it would be, one of the actresses who played Lara.
Rona Mitra?
Hugo. And we were told she was coming and we were going to meet her at some point. And the way they did it, suddenly we were all sat there at our computers, you know, tapping away. And suddenly the door flipped open. She jumped into the room, went, with her gun. And we were all sat there like, how do you react to this? Just the weirdest thing. We'd never seen a live, you know, there's a person dressed up as this character in the game, standing in the room, and Neil went, what do you keep in your backpack? It turned out she had a bottle of baby oil to keep her glossy.
Oh yeah, because those tops were quite, they were I think very latex tops and so on. But feeling that's probably just specific to the model. I don't think that Lara would carry that around in the game. Yeah. She had an infinite endless backpack though in the game that she could basically put anything in and it would fit. So how about for you, Richard? What was like one of those moments that was just kind of like out of just so bizarre when you knew that the franchise was really taking off?
Yeah, it was. I think obviously the film was like, you know, just absolutely crazy, getting you know, certain privy access to early scripts and things like that, and also the YouTube video.
Yeah.
That was you know, Laura based in that. I mean, you just sort of think she's huge now. I mean, she'd already been in every popular magazine through fashion and pop culture. Yeah. The weirdest thing was I can't remember if it was Tomb Raider 4 where this like one of the Ultimate fans from Germany came over on his push bike.
He biked, yeah.
All the way across the channel, all the way up to Core, and everybody was outside clapping him as he arrived, as if he'd like done this round the world trip sort of thing. And the current Laura model was there to meet him as well, and apparently they went for dinner.
Yeah.
So that was like...
I remember that.
Niels, yeah. I think he's from the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So it was just, it's like one of those weird, quirky things, but that just seems to be Tomb Raider, doesn't it, to be honest?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that leads into my next question perfectly. Like, what are some of your most memorable moments interacting with fans? So we've obviously got the Niels biking to the studio from the Netherlands, like Gavin or Jamie, do you guys have any specific things that stand out with fans?
To be honest, I didn't have much interaction with fans until the 20th anniversary of Manchester's tour. And we were sat on the stage and there was a group of us. Rich should have been there, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been
there. We talked to May and did the thing, and then at the end of it, they went, right. And suddenly people mobbed the stage and started asking for autographs. So I was like, okay. And I was there with my son, who was just like, what's happening, Dad? Why are they all laughing? He'd never encountered that, because people kind of assume if you've been involved in something like this, you walk down the street and there's people mobbing you. We're not famous like that. So it was a very different, and that was the first time I'd ever encountered that. Since then, I've been a few things I've been invited to where people come to you with their boxes and want you signing it.
That's
it's
so
a bit
cool.
Switch that on. Doing it then, like feeling like, hey, yeah, I'm a... And then you just walk out and catch the bus home, you know.
And how about for you, Jamie? Was it also the kind of same thing where
Yeah,
you're just behind the scenes so much?
Yeah, not so much with like no real like meeting fans or anything like that. I guess it's more, as like working at other studios and just like working with people who just like, oh, I can't believe you worked on like Tomb Raider, and they were like a fan of the game, so they kind of start asking lots of questions. And like I mentioned earlier with a friend who, like when he was a kid, like his dad used to play the games and things like that. He used to watch his dad play, and so like is a friend like who and a colleague at the studio I was working at. So he was kind of geeking out a bit, I guess, just like, oh, you worked on Tomb Raider, that's so cool. And so I guess it's more with either people I've worked with outside of core design, and then just I guess people then I've met, like either like house parties or something, and when they start asking, what do you do for a living and that kind of stuff, and you start, I'm working games, and what games have you worked on, and then obviously mention Tomb Raider. They're like, I can't believe that you worked on Tomb Raider. So I guess it's more like those situations, I guess, rather than kind of fans, I suppose, at like certain events and things like that.
Well, things are so different now with making games. It's a very public thing now, right? The development process, there's so much public about it, and dev diaries and all these sorts of things. And you guys were just, a lot of the time just sitting there doing your work in very short timelines, trying to get the next game out. So I can definitely see and understand that. So go ahead.
I was just going to say we had a different thing because we had Susie Hamilton on. Back then she'd just walk in on a day and she'd go, I was a Belgian film crew in this afternoon, so then you'd be like, really?
Yeah.
Go and talk to them for a bit and just say whatever you liked. No one even tried to script what we said or anything. We could have said anything. We did.
I inherited that role, Gavin. Thank you very much for that.
I've recently uncovered a couple of really good ones for TR4, so I'm excited we're digitizing them, but there's some really good behind the scenes sort of stuff that they were talking to everybody, and there's some fun things there to dig through. So to wrap, go ahead.
Sorry, no, yeah, I just thought of something with, I think that was similar to what Gavin mentioned. Yeah, I think, was that Tomb Raider 3, Richard, or Tomb Raider 4, where we did the photo shoot where we were all in like tuxedos or something.
Tuxedo shoot. That was 2 and 3.
We were all kind of gesturing towards Lara Croft. So the lady, I think it was as part of like the photo shoot, she was the stand-in for Lara. But of course, then they replaced her with the digitized like Lara Croft.
Oh yeah, I remember that image.
And we were all in tuxedos, kind of. Ta-da! Here's Lara, kind of.
I have that magazine somewhere.
I think that may
back there somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it, but I don't know if we have it in our collection. I think it's so funny because somehow 25 years later, sometimes we're discovering new assets or things that have been kind of lost, and fans get so excited about them. But I do remember that. I remember seeing it in a magazine. That one's super cool.
Yeah, I remember that.
So to wrap up, I just wanted to just kind of go around and ask, like, what are you guys up to today? Are you still doing working games, and how has your time working on Tomb Raider just influenced what you do now? So Gavin, what are you up to these days?
Nowadays I have my own little mobile company and making smaller games because I like working in small teams.
Yeah.
That's the truth. So I kind of found myself moving more and more up the management chain because of Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
But then I kind of found myself wanting to just get back to a bit like Rich talked about when he was, when I arrived at Core, he was in the managerial role. I just want to get back to programming and doing small stuff, so that's what I'm doing now.
Awesome. How about you, Richard?
I work kind of in video games, but we make educational and training software.
Oh, cool.
For industry, like banks, oil companies, things like that. So we're not in the public eye at all, but we do, I hate the word, but we gamify stuff to make it more fun to learn, basically, and more fun to be trained.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like what Gav says, we're quite a small core team. We have other teams across the world, and we make games that are quite short project lengths, maybe like between 3 and 6 months. We don't have the pressure of having to make things good for sales, but we do have the pressure of making things good for the clients. Yeah. So it's like a different kind of pressure. But yeah, it's cool. It's fun.
Yeah. And how about for you, Jamie?
I'm working at Ubisoft Düsseldorf.
Okay.
So here in Germany, I'm working on Assassin's Creed for VR.
Oh, cool. So, and before that, you've stayed in games. I think have you stayed in games the whole time since you worked on Tomb Raider?
Yes. So I guess I was at core design, which then became Rebellion, part of Rebellion when I just saw core design and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I was at core design / Rebellion Derby for like 17 years. Something.
Wow.
And then, I was working at a studio in Germany as well for some time. And then I was at Ubisoft in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. That's cool.
In the United Arab Emirates for about 7 years. And then, just at the start of last year, I transferred over to Ubisoft Düsseldorf.
Cool.
Yeah. So I guess, with like the... I guess coming from you with design with Tomb Raider, I guess it still like informs like certain decisions I kind of make. I guess here in design, it's still some things are very similar. No matter I guess which kind of game you're working on, you still take sort of best practices or just certain things maybe you did back then, and it still kind of works. Of course, then you learn new techniques and new things as well, but I guess you're all kind of all part of the journey, I guess.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, well, do you guys have anything you want to say to fans before we sign off? We'll probably get this up within a week or so, hopefully, but I know they're going to be so excited to hear some of these insights. Gavin, is there anything you want to say to fans, or?
Well, thanks for keeping me playing, I think. Amazing that 25 years we're having this conversation, honestly.
Yeah. How about for you, Richard?
Yeah, here's to the next 25 years. I've enjoyed playing the latest 3 Tomb Raider games myself. I think really getting back into the swing of what makes Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
So yeah, here's to the next 25. I'll be playing them as a fan rather than a developer.
The next anniversaries are terrifying. I don't know how I'm going to keep doing more things every 5 years for these celebrations. How about for you, Jamie?
Yeah, I guess just a big thank you to the fans. You've continued support of Tomb Raider and Lara, and that they still enjoy playing the games.
Yeah,
it's a really cool feeling, I guess, to have been a part of that franchise, and that people still continue to enjoy it. Yeah, so it's just a big thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.